On this episode of Blending Bourbon, Dixon and I have a conversation with Blake Reber, the bourboner from Seelbachs.
Blending Bourbon is the podcast that takes you beyond the barrel and behind the scenes of the whiskey industry with master blenders Dixon Dedman and David Mark Young.
Welcome back. Another episode of Blending Bourbon. I am Dixon Dedman with 2XO Whiskey, joined as always by David Mark Young, the pride of Omaha, self-proclaimed largest piece of meat in the Omaha market, master blender, owner of Golden Sheaf, and also the only guy I know who drives a branded Suburban and tries to use it to pick up school children. Sorry, that is not true. Just
No. And cut.
Wait, I don't. I mean, it's just to give them a ride home.
There's that free candy sign that he has on the outside.
It's just because he's kind of like a big brother to all the children in Omaha.
Man, I check IDs before I pick up any random person in Nebraska. No.
Yeah, let's push the envelope with that one.
Yeah, I know. Dixon Dedman, how are you?
I'm terrific. Man, this is, maybe you should do the intro here for our, our fine, esteemed guest.
It's tradition. All the intros are.
Well, I was fortunate enough to meet this gentleman, and he can probably correct me because I'm gonna be wrong. Back when he had a vision of what he wanted to create, and he was passionate about this industry, and said, I've got this idea. And I actually remember pulling over in a Taco Bell parking lot in Bardstown on my way back from picking up some samples and having an hour-long conversation with him about the ins and outs of what at least that he was kind of picking my brain, and we talked and then have crossed paths with him many times at a lot of really cool events and cool opportunities, and he's kind of this guy, the success that he's had and the impact he's having on the industry, I'm just really proud that I was able to say that we were friends before and watched him grow this empire that he's building, and he was bourboner back then. He's the proud owner of Seelbachs and all the things that are under that umbrella now, and so it's cool to have Blake on the show, and I was
Absolutely
really glad when you reached out and got this set up.
Yeah, welcome, Blake.
Yeah,
how about that intro?
Thank you for having me. Yeah, I mean, I think it can only go downhill from there. I can only screw this thing up after that intro. So it's funny. I mean, when Dixon, think about, we were talking on when it was just the bourboner days, and I remember those calls early on where I think you were in the middle of sale or thinking about a sale, all this stuff, and it's like, but that was a perfect example of who we were trying to highlight. It's like, it's this great brand, it's a cool story, the whiskey's great, but it's not national.
Yeah.
With that brand, you're probably just Kentucky, maybe one or two others. And that was the thing I just kept seeing over and over again. And it's like, these brands need exposure. They need somebody kind of fighting for them. And you guys know the retail game. It's tough at times. And, to grab somebody's attention. And that's where the whole idea for Seelbach started. And I think I may have said it before the show. Whenever I had to spell out the name, I probably would have thought of a better name had I known I was going to be using it 5 years later. But still spelling it out every time. But no, it's been great. It's a great ride and obviously fun to see.
I think like to go back to where it started, like where
it all began.
Because this is going to be about like a five-part question.
Well,
which is kind of the way
quick.
I roll.
Let's start with this real quick. Let me start with a to the point question, real quick.
No,
You have like a 10-minute intro. Okay. When you meet someone, I'm Blake. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you, Blake. What do you do? What do you tell them?
Yeah, that's a funny one these days. So I live in Jacksonville, Florida, and so thankfully bourbon's getting so much bigger, or a lot bigger where it seems reasonable. But I was a accountant, worked in the CPA world for 10 to 12 years, so it wasn't as much as like, what do I tell people now? I just say, we sell spirits online. Our business sells spirits online. But to go from accountant, I think some people still think I'm like a bourbon influencer and do TikTok dance around bourbon bottles or something, and that's how I'm feeding my children. But it is. It's not an easy business model to explain to people because it's like, well, we sell spirits online. We have a warehouse in DC, but I'm in Jacksonville. And a lot of who we carry is in Kentucky and everywhere else, and all this stuff. So.
Look, David asked that question all wrong, and you should have just let me go with this because I had something I needed to talk about.
Just ruin your 5-part question.
Let's hear the real question.
Yeah, so first part of the question.
That was a clip.
Do you remember what it was, or that moment, or that what was it that made that what was the thing that caused you to go down the bourbon rabbit hole? What, like at the very beginning, was the first pour? What was the first experience? Was it college? Was it what was the first thing you said? Oh wow, I'm into bourbon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wish there was. I've probably said this in a story on Dixon before, but I wish I had like that family heritage, or just, well, this is what my dad drank and my granddad drank and all this stuff. But I really didn't have that. I grew up in a house that didn't drink, which was even kind of funnier. But I think because of it, I'd start seeing stuff online. I'd see certain people drinking whiskey at bars and getting old fashions, that kind of stuff. But 2010-ish, it really just wasn't that big of a thing. It was still kind of your granddad's thing. And I remember, like realizing, I probably, I'm a year out of college. I probably shouldn't store Maker's Mark in the freezer anymore. I should probably just keep it out on the shelf. It'll hold better that way.
We're not doing shots.
Yeah, exactly. But so there were just kind of like several pieces like that. And then, I think the fun thing to me is always just to explore. And as we all know with bourbon, like you can get on some rabbit holes and starting to dive down all those things. And then this is all the same time where like the bourbon Facebook community is becoming a real thing. It's kind of ubiquitous at this point, but back then you didn't have all these groups. It was like Straight Bourbon, the forum. It was Bourbon Enthusiast, the forum, and some blogs. But so all this is coming on Facebook. And what I realized was like, I'm actually, while I think I'm kind of the minority of bourbon drinkers because I don't have this family legacy or people drinking or whatever, like I'm actually in the majority of who's coming into the industry. And I think I really saw that I started the blog and was trying to do like this way to review apps and everything.
That's where we're going next. Like what was, because I think you were you were one of the first big, influencers that wasn't writing for a major print periodical. Like you were kind of like, I can remember when they were like, oh, Dixon, did you see this bourboner guy? And I was like, what is that? And I started thinking something like, what? Like,
And this was 2010.
when you started?
So that would have been around 2013 when it started. Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
And was that like just like I need this distraction from crunching numbers kind of thing? Like this,
yeah.
I mean, were you ever thinking I'm going to monetize this, or this is going to grow this? It's like I like to write. I like spirits. I'm going to start writing about spirits, kind of thing. Or how that?
Yeah. So my brother will always tell the joke of you haven't seen the crazy random ideas and businesses Blake has tried to start before this, but I've always just kind of played around with I think I was importing like egg incubators and selling them on Amazon way back in the day before like fulfillment by Amazon. There was, I was big into triathlons, just trying to do all this stuff. And so there was just always something. And that just, to me, that's fun. Like you can have a hobby or you can do these things as your hobby. And if you make money, great. If you don't, great. So I had a lot of that stuff kind of going on. So the original idea with Bourboner was it would just like an app or site that you could keep track of your notes. Cause I had these 33 books or 33 notebooks that I keep and I'd forget. And I was like, oh, it'd be cool to be an app for that. And I'm not a developer. So it kind of fizzled out pretty quickly, but I was like, well, an app needs a blog to draw attention to it.
Right.
And so I think the first post that really just took off was something, it was like, when did Pappy become so popular? And I just took a Google trend and it just showed the number of searches over months for the past like 5 years. And all of a sudden there's like a few thousand people on it. I'm like, well, that was kind of fun. Like it's kind of it's this adrenaline rush of things, and just started pushing it from there, and never had the idea that like, oh, this is going to be some big money maker. But it's like, well, if there's a way to figure out how to make money out of something you're passionate about and you enjoy, like, why would I not do that too? So, I did like a little bit of advertising here and there. And then that turned into the Bourboner Pro memberships, which we started in like 2015. So this is like pre-Patreon, it was probably like the biggest introduction to the internet ever. Like we've all had trolling comments and we all get them. Mm-hmm. And I did that. And I mean, it was like I had just, the only sin that you can't commit is profiting off of bourbon, apparently, to, the bourbon world in 2015. I'm like, well, guys, like, spend a lot of time on this. I'm not asking for a lot of money and nothing's going to change, So it is just funny to go back and look at that. But I think it's always been fun to me. I've always enjoyed it. And there's always something new to learn and to share that with others. And, I feel like we're doing the exact same thing, but on a retail side with Seelbachs. Like we're getting stories, we're telling stories, we're doing reviews, we're, giving people more of an education than just like, boom, here it is, buy it.
Right.
So it was like good training for what I do now.
The Seelbachs thing, I mean, those conversations that we had, they were, and you're like, what do you think about this? And I was like, I don't even, like that is freaking amazing what you're talking about doing. I
Sounds
don't know
impossible.
how you do it, but it's,
Right.
and like, I'm always in awe of your ability to kind of be ahead of things, and not only be ahead of them, but to like figure out the path to it. When you're like, I remember you were like, yeah, well, if I set this up in DC, and I was like, last I checked, you lived in Jacksonville and you were a CPA. And you're like, yeah, but if I do this
If I
in
remember
DC,
correctly,
like,
yeah.
all right. I mean, it's awesome. I can't, I think what you've done and what you've accomplished and your ability to kind of be ahead of things is incredible.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. Means a lot coming from you, because you know how this industry works. Unfortunately, it's not a ton of forward thinking at times, and
no, and it's different everywhere from state to state and region to region, and from retailer to retailer, all the things. And I can only imagine. I had a small glimpse into fulfillment, and we tried to do on a national level fulfillment, and we asserted some things. This is during COVID, so it was, during the Wild Wild West, and once I got into, and this was pre getting our hand slapped and shut down. Once I got into, inter and intra-state regulations, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, that's a dynamic aspect, right? Right. I mean, doesn't that change regularly for you?
Yeah, and thankfully we've had just some partners like on the software side that really make sure, it's like, hey, if the product is set up correctly, we will, withhold the correct taxes, file them on time, do all these things. So there are some good things for that, but early on it's just, and not only is it dynamic, I think half the time nobody knows what is actually going on.
What's going on behind the
so you
scenes,
get one answer from one side and a different answer from the other side. Then you talk to our DC attorneys and they're like, it's federally legal. Go ship wherever you want. And I'm like, well, that doesn't sound right either. So,
well, yeah, I heard your recent episode with Ryan and Kenny, and I recall you saying that you talked to one set of legal folks and they tell you green light, and then someone else, hell no, stop. There's a lot of conflicting direction out there.
In general, I think that can be alcohol at times. I feel bad for brands who decide to go heavy in control states, because I feel like unless you really have a friend in the office, it can be a lot of fun too. But it's kind of like a barrier to entry. So not everybody, like, if you get it figured out to a decent amount, like, not everybody wants to jump into that. And, and I think for us too, it's like, then we can take brands to states that they probably don't want to go to, but they have customers there. So it kind of scratches that itch where, at the end of the day, we're want to get bottles to people who want to drink them and talk about them and do all that. So it's like, how can we do that efficiently? Right. And efficiently is not always the word. It's like, how can we do that painstakingly? Or, yeah.
So I know you make a decision to invest in a product and then take that into your inventory. And it's a big decision. I'm sure there's research, market research, product research and whatnot. But once you make that decision, you've got that investment, then you've got your marching orders cut out for you, because otherwise you're going to sit on that product that becomes your private stash if you don't sell it. So it better be
drinking
good.
Well for some months. Yeah.
Right. So what's been your regular biggest challenge?
That's that's the biggest thing is, I think, trying to predict what customers want. So we kind of have this balance of, there's just some products that they fit into what we do. Maybe it's not my favorite thing, but it sells. People are wanting it. Great. Get that out there. Then there's this other set of products where it's like, man, we really believe in it. We love it. We want to keep bringing it in. It's just going to take more time. And we've seen that happen enough, where, a lot of times people just need to see a bottle 3, 4, 5 times, right, from, people they trust that have reviewed it, sites that they've trust posting about it, all that kind of stuff. And then they finally give it a chance and they're like, oh yeah, this is what they're talking about. And then there's just some where it's like, I don't know if we just overbought or what, but we're constantly just trying to decide ahead of times, 6 weeks ahead, what we think people are going to want to buy. Right. And if you sell out in 10 seconds, well, you just missed a lot of sales because you didn't buy enough. Or you could overbuy and you're sitting on it for a while. So that's the biggest challenge. And we've gotten better. But there's surprises every week, every month. Brian, who's on our team, Bikey, he's in Louisville, and we'll look at it and we're like, did you see this coming? I'm like, I never saw that coming. I don't know. And, you know, it's just funny to see, like, and granted, we're still a small piece of the consumer base, but it's like, you know, you hear, oh, the bottle that's $200 is dead. And then we have a $300 bottle that sells out in 30 minutes. And it's like, everybody wants affordable pours. And we release something that's $30 and we sell 6 bottles. It's like, well, you know, that's the biggest challenge. You know, cause it's not only is it, with us, it's a cash thing, it's a space thing, it's a confusion when going to, you know, pick, pack, and ship. And so that's, it's the constant battle, but it's the fun part of it too.